All right, cool. Here we go. So, you should have titled this the distributive property, 3.3 distributive property. I want you guys to simplify these two all the way. Go ahead and simplify them. Give space. Do what you know to do to simplify these. Order of operations, etc. Right? PEMDAS, etc. I think you guys should know how to simplify these. Order of operations says do parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. Start doing them. Don't sit there and wait for me to do them. You do them. Don't do the next two. Just do the first two that I have in front of you. And you should have these answers, right? Yes? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So there's a property that's called the distributive property. That tells us if we have something that looks like this, a number times a set of parentheses, or in that parentheses I've got a set of terms, right? It doesn't matter what they are, a set of terms, and I can rewrite it like this, where I am literally distributing. What does distribute mean?
An instant.
What? Sort, okay.
Like giving.
Give out. That's a better way of thinking about it. Distribute means to pass out things, to pass things out, to give them. Literally taking this A term, and I'm giving it to the B and to the C. Here you go. Here you go, B and C. You can have some A, right? There we go. And it works with both a positive and a negative. We're going to do a sort of hybrid version of these two at the same time. We'll say we're actually going to make it so that it's AB plus or minus positive. It will all depend on what the sign of A is. So now what I want us to do is I want us to apply that distributive property to those exact same problems. I want us to rewrite these using the distributive property. So to rewrite this is the A, this is the B, and this is the C. Can you rewrite this using the distributive property? Don't simplify anything, just rewrite it using the distributive property. A, B, and C.
You can do that. Oh, never mind.
So you would just rewrite it using the distributive property. What would it look like? Did you get this? 3 times 5 plus 3 times 6? Now, one thing that I want you to note, the sign of this is the sign of A. Okay? The sign of this is the sign of A. It is not going to be the sign of this. Okay? This is the sign of A. Make a note to yourself if you need to. Sign of A. A is the number outside the parentheses, okay? So this sign is the sign of A. Which means that for number 4, I can't see, just move. A, B, and C. Then this becomes negative 5 times 8 minus 5 times 5. Why negative 5? This is a plus sign. Why a minus sign there? See?
Because A is negative.
Exactly. So do you see how this is negative 5 and this is negative 5? You see that? This symbol is not going to be the sign from the parentheses. It's going to be the sign of A. Okay? Sign of A. Sign of A. And of course, let's simplify those. 3 times 5 is? 3 times 6 is? 15 plus 18 is? 33. Hey, look at that. Oh, okay. All right. Negative 5 times 8 is? negative 40. Negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. Negative 40 and negative 25 is negative 65. Hey, look at that. We proved the distributive property. Now, when could this be helpful? It's probably less helpful in this case, right? In this instance, it's probably better to combine like terms inside and then multiply by the a, right? Combine b and c and then multiply the a, because they're like terms. But when would the distributive property be required? No, because what if this was a negative 5? Could we still do the multiplication? Yeah, instead of saying negative 5 times 5, it would be negative 5 times negative 5. When would we be required to use the distributive property?
The multiplication. Math.
No. Why would it be on this slide? Why is it probably better to do this? It's easier. It's easier to combine your like terms on the inside than multiply. When will we not be able to do that?
When there's no.
Okay.
There's bigger numbers.
Okay, all right, when there's bigger numbers, yeah. No, you guys are still thinking numbers. What have we been working with this entire time? Terms, variables, letters. When will we have to use the distributive property? What if I can't combine those? Because they're what? If you can't combine them, it's because they're what? Not like terms, they're unlike terms. What if this was a variable? Could I do x plus 6 and combine them? No, but what could I do? 3 times x and 3 times 6. This idea, a lot of times people draw arrows. The thing to be careful with when you draw your arrows is that A keeps its sign. All right? So let's take a look at some of these. All right? Just want to remind you, an algebraic expression is in simplest form, right, when it has no like terms and no parentheses. You with me on that? That's from previous notes. So when you distribute a positive, this is called distribution, right? Distributive property. When you distribute a positive, we take this 7 and we pass it out to everything that's in there. Now, like I said, the sign in our distributive property is the sign of A. It's the sign of A. So when we write this out, we're going to write it out as 7 times t. Now, is this going to be a plus or a minus sign? It's going to be a positive sign. Plus 7 times negative 2. Why negative 2? Well, because it's all about the terms. What's the first term in the parentheses? T. What's the second term in the parentheses? Negative 2. So, what's the first term in the parentheses over here?
T.
What's the second term in the parentheses? Negative 2. Do you see where those come from? So when you draw your arrows, you're actually drawing them not to the numbers, but to the terms. You're drawing the arrows to the number, or to the term, not the number or letter. Yes, ma'am?
So, if you actually, if you worked out the problem, that'd be 17.
So let's finish. Let's go ahead and finish simplifying, right? Because we still have parentheses and we still have like terms, right? So we need to finish simplifying, like Ash was saying, 7t. Same sign, positive, different sign, negative. Minus 14. That's our simplified answer. That's distributing a positive, right? Hey, this should look familiar to you. Now, on your notes, what do you have? You have a negative 1. Why did I put the 1 on your notes? But I didn't put it on mine. Remember what we've already learned about the negative sign in front of parentheses?
Yes, sir.
What do we remember about it?
It's going to be a negative 1. A 1.
It's going to be a 1 there. So if I want to distribute that negative, remember, so we talked about how we were going to change the signs. This is why. Okay? This is why we do that. So I'm going to distribute this negative 1. And I'm going to distribute that negative not to the x and to the 5, but to the x and the positive 5. You're not distributing it to the numbers, you're distributing it to the terms. So we want to write it down exactly what it says. All right? So this equals negative 1 parentheses x, negative 1 parentheses 5. Because it's negative 1 times x and negative 1 times 5. Negative 1 times x, negative 1 times 5. Do you see how it says that? What's the sign over here? What's that sign? It's the sign of the a term. A is the one that's being multiplied. It's the sign of the number that's in there. So then we simplify this. This would be negative x minus 5. Yes?
Is it okay if you put a 1 by the x?
I don't want you to. It is okay. It is mathematically the same, right? But I don't want you to, because I want you to get in the habit of working in that way. Okay? All right, I want you and your partners to do number 7 and 8, talk about it, and then we'll talk about 9 and 10. You and your partner to work through number 7 and then work through number 8. Talking with your partner. Talk about the sign after you do the distributive property.
Distribute. My kind of math, Maddie. This is my kind of math. This is probably next week, maybe not, but this week I can. Take your strand, I'm honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are you not doing it?
No, it's because it's
It is.
All right, check what you got. Hey y'all, did you get this part right? This is the part where people mess up. This specific spot. Negative 8 and what? Negative 8 and negative 4. Why negative 4? Because what's the second term in the parentheses? It's all about multiplying terms. A times B and A times C. C is not 4, C is negative 4. The second term in the parentheses is negative 4. So you should write down exactly that. Negative 8 times x, negative 8 times negative 4. Exactly that order. And then this one's same sign positive. Exactly. All right, here we go. Let's move on to the fractions and decimals. Once again, I want you talking with your neighbors. Write it out. Talking about it with your neighbors. Sometimes you have to multiply by fractions. That's okay. Just do it. Talk about it with your neighbors. Draw the arrows, draw the boxes.
Thank you. Probably help me work on that. Work as your partner. How did you get it, sweetheart? Remember, you do 1.5 times with your parentheses around your 8. Okay?
You're there.
Plus, negative. There you go. Okay.
You shouldn't have gotten 0. Because they're not like terms. There was a question. I'm going to answer up there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's good. Did you check it up here? thinking about signs. Negative something times positive something. At least you're thinking signs. I love that. That's awesome. Okay? So multiplying by fractions, you might have to do some side work. That's fine. If you have to do some side work, that's okay. 1/3 times 3 is the same thing as 1/3 times 3 over 1, right? 1/3 times 6 is the same thing as 1/3 times 6 over 1. You with me? Remember, my handwriting's bad because my bad thumb.
Your bum.
A bum thumb. Questions? I love what I heard over here. If somebody said, well, it's going to be negative something times plus and positive something, right? Same sign, positive, different sign, negative. So we make sure we get that. Okay? Now, we got a short time, so I want to make sure that I get to at least one of the next kind of problems. This is just applying the distributive property. Okay? This is just applying the distributive property. Now we're going to apply the distributive property and simplify. Okay? So, what should we do first? Well, I look at the parentheses, right? Can I do anything inside the parentheses? Why not? They're not like terms. I can't combine them, so now I need to do my multiplication. What's my only multiplication I have here? 2 times everything that's in there. So, I do 2 times x, and 2 times what? Positive 6. Let's be using positives and negatives when we talk about these things. So 2 parentheses x. And then is the 2 positive or is the 2 negative? Positive, so it would be positive 2 times 6. And then we just continue writing out the rest, right? Minus 8x plus 4, because I haven't done anything with that stuff yet. Now let's simplify. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 6 is 12. 12. And then minus 8x plus 4. Hey, what can I do now? I can do my shape method, right? Shape method. Write that down. Write it down to yourself. Do the shape method now. Eventually, we'll be able to get away from the shape method once you get really good at seeing the like terms. So, positive 2x, negative 8, same sign, add. Different signs, subtract, and keep the sign of the bigger one so I can be exact. Good. And then I also want to do, let's go with light blue. Positive 12, positive 4, same sign, add, and I get 16. And that is my final answer. Questions on this? It's just taking the distributive property and then adding the step of simplify to it. So distributive property typically we want to do first. We got time for one more, I think. I want you and your partners to work through this one together. Careful. There's 2 distributive properties. What are you distributing in the first one?
3.
Positive. Use positives and negatives. Positive 3. What are you distributing in the second one?
Negative.
Negative 2. Make sure that you are distributing correctly. All right, so I'll show the first step. What's the sign, when I do my distributive property, what's the sign that goes in between the 2? What's the sign that goes in between the 2? Yeah, there's going to be two numbers here, right? Or 2 terms. What's the sign that goes in it?
Subtraction.
What's the very first thing we wrote down? It's the sign of what? If you didn't write that down, you need to write it down somewhere. It's the sign of A. Running short on time, so I'm just going to finish the problem for you guys. And we get x. What cancels out? Positive 8, negative 8. Minus 9. Don't leave yet. Finish writing the problem. Answer is x minus 9. Okay.